Hey guys, it's Carl here. Well, I had some people tell me that I am due for another Q&A video, so these are easier for me. So yeah, I just went on Instagram. If you don't follow me on Instagram, by the way, you'll see a link in the description. Follow me on Instagram. I'm a more interesting version of myself over there. And then, you know, I posted it here on YouTube as well. So got a lot of responses and questions. Obviously, can't look at all, can't tackle all of them. A lot of them are the same things or ones I've answered in previous Q&As. So watch those. Your question might have already been answered if I didn't answer yours. Anyway, so I'm going to try to get through these as quick as possible because my brother hates it when I wander, take forever to get through these questions. I love that. But anyway, let's jump into it. Jackson Rogers asks, he's got like 5 questions, so I'm going to kind of halfway answer them. What's your most embarrassing gig moment? Was the first question. It's online. You can find it. I'm jumping off, not jumping off, trying to step off of a drum riser, and I fall backwards on one of the biggest stages in Las Vegas while playing Hot for Teacher, at the end of Hot for Teacher. So if you Google Bugsy's Hitmen and like Hot for Teacher, or there's a few videos I think of us playing that people put up there, but there's one where we're playing like Let's Go Crazy by Prince into Hot for Teacher. And so you see the full video. At the end of the video, yeah, I kind of lay out on the stage. But I owned it. I was still playing, still ripping while on my back. It's perfectly, by the way, moral of the story, don't play in dress shoes. So it's not a good thing to do. Favorite song to play live? Well, when I was playing in the band, we were like kind of an 80s hard rock cover band. So it was whatever you know, I kind of have my favorite songs, but it's not really my favorite song, but the songs that the people love the most, especially in a big place with lots of drunk people, stuff like Sweet Child of Mine, stuff like that, they love that kind of stuff. So yeah, probably that one just because of the crowd response. Who have I seen in concerts? Too many to mention. Seen a lot of bands, seen tons of concerts. My first ever concert was the Rolling Stones Steel Wheels tour. I was in Death Valley in Clemson, South Carolina. My dad took me to see the Stones. So, but technically the first real band, I mean, it was like actual real popular band. First band I ever saw play live basically was Living Colour, because they were opening for the Stones that night. So I was like 13, 14 years old. So, but yeah, it was a great place to start. So I've seen lots of concerts. Who I haven't seen that I'd like to see is, obviously I'd love to see Pink Floyd, for them to do something, or you know, Roger Waters and David Gilmour to get together and do something, or just David Gilmour on his own. I've never even seen him, so I'd like to see that. So it's kind of the main one I'd like to see that I can't, you know, I've never seen play live before, that I would like to. Top 10 favorite guitarists, that's a lot. Kind of the old suspects: Steve Vai, Eric Johnson, Nuno Bettencourt, David Gilmour, Eddie Van Halen, stuff like that. You know, I know that's not 10, but it's kind of the same ones that everybody else likes pretty much. And what guitarists have I met? I've been able to meet a lot of guitar players, mostly when I worked at Guitar Center. So I met a lot of famous musicians there, but including Eddie was my favorite that I've met. There's a lot of ones that I haven't really met. That I would like to, but not, you know, I don't go out of my way to do it either. Nick Baldaccio says, Baldacchino, I'm sorry, man. I'm gonna butcher everybody's name here, by the way. You just watch. What was the most frustrating song you had to learn for a video? When I get frustrated with songs, it's generally songs that just have kind of erratic solos that people obviously expect me to get note for note. And also ones I'm not completely familiar with. So as we know, there's a lot of solos out there by a lot of especially like blues-based rock players that the solos are just kind of off the cuff. It's a lot of the same things done over and over again with slight variations. And to get that exactly like the person actually did it on the recording is next to impossible. They never even do it the same way twice, so it's kind of one of those things. And there will be songs, stuff like, you know, the Heartbreaker solo, you know, which I didn't do for a long time just because of the nature of the solo. It's just very erratic, and it's kind of hard to kind of make it sound like that. So you avoid it, but I went for it and it came out okay. Sir Moist, what prompted you to start putting out super long and detailed 40-minute lessons rather than 10 minutes? So just because there were already people doing it. There was already people out there making kind of simplified versions of songs, or just kind of not teaching full songs, or kind of really catering to the kind of the easier songs out and not really doing challenging stuff, advanced type stuff or upper intermediate type stuff, and teaching the exact song like it was played on the recording. So I realized that's something that I could do. It's a lot of work, obviously. It's more work, but it's you know, so that's kind of just became what I do. Is I give kind of these really detailed lessons, and so that's why they have to be 40 minutes, I guess. Kyle Moreland said, what inspired you to create the GL365 Academy? Thank you. If everybody doesn't know, there's a link to my academy in the description, by the way. It's all my guitar courses. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before, but it's what keeps me alive. So, you know, please check it out. Free 7-day trial. The Academy is a collection of all my guitar courses, and it's basically an assimilation of all the things I learned throughout decades of playing guitar. So I've been fortunate enough to study with a lot of great teachers for musicianship and stuff like ear training, like Dick Grove, who's like a legend in the LA area for his Dick Grove School of Music. I mean, many famous people, and jazz to rock, everything have studied under him, myself included. And for the classical guitar world, a lot of really great guitar players that I study from the classical guitar world, and so everything, and great rock guitar players, everything. So just over the years, I kind of took assimilated a lot of the things that they taught me into my own methods of doing stuff, which is just kind of a combination of a lot of great minds, I think. And so that's pretty much what I'm doing in my academy. I'm just kind of assimilating information so you don't have to spend 3 decades acquiring it on your own. Dejan Govska, you learn how to play new songs for lessons on almost a daily basis, but do you actually remember how to play most of them after some time? I do not. To be completely honest with you, I just finished filming a lesson for Rosanna by Toto, like literally 8 to 10 minutes ago, and we just started filming this. And I've already forgot how to play it. I don't even know. So that's how great my memory is. Jules, what bands and genres do you like the most? Overall favorite style of music is kind of like modern classical music. Modern, not like modern, like the 20th, it's more of like early 20th century classical music. Stuff like Ravel, Debussy, and stuff like that. I'm kind of a weird bird when it comes to listening to music. I'm out walking my dogs every day for like an hour, and I'll get into like a kick of like some modern metal. So I'll listen to like Periphery for like a week. And then I'll go and I'll listen to, for the next week, I'll listen to nothing but Debussy. And then I'll go into a Steve Vai kick, you know. So it's just kind of, I'm just all over the place with it. So there's really nothing one thing. It's really kind of the mood that I'm in. Are there any songs that you don't like teaching? That's from Dale Adams. It's kind of like what I talked about before. There's a lot of songs that I teach that I don't actually like the song. It's just kind of the way it goes. It's more just what you guys want me to do. I don't teach a lot of modern songs just because simply not very familiar with a lot of music that's come out in the past 20 years. I kind of stick with the classics, but except some of my favorite bands, of course. But so yeah, it requires you to kind of have knowledge, and then people ask me. But I've kind of become known for those guys who does like the classic rock and metal and all that stuff. So that's usually what's requested. So I don't get a lot of newer bands requested, but I'll do them occasionally. But there's not a lot of stuff that I hear recently that is very interesting to me. So when I have to do a lesson for it, it's kind of like, oh, just get through it, you know. Creepy Sherpa, will you ever do a 7-string song lesson? I wouldn't mind doing it, but I just don't think that there's enough of a audience, enough people out there to actually own 7 strings and want to learn this particular 7-string song. So that's kind of, when I do the song lessons, it's really about mass public appeal, really. Because if I teach to work on transcribing the stuff and I put it out there and it doesn't get a lot of views, one, YouTube penalizes me because a certain video doesn't get a certain quota of views. And if that happens, then for the next 2 months, my videos don't get very good views, new videos. And, you know, so anyway, it just depends on the, really just kind of the popularity of it. Just determines whether I would do it or not. Nemanja Domozev, how do you learn guitar solos by ear? Fair question. So this kind of comes from 2 areas. It comes from just knowing a style very well. That's one side of the token. And one is ear training. So like the ear training method that I teach in my academy is called functional ear training, which teaches you how to recognize what every single note within a tonality sounds like. And then after you do that, when you hear any kind of melody, say if you were doing, you said solos by ear, so most of that's like single note stuff. So when you hear a melody note, I'll just break up the solo in like phrases. So I'll, play it real quick, kind of stop it and hum it back to myself. So internalize the melody in my head first. I just kind of sing it to myself or whatever. So after that, after I got it internalized, then I use my ear training to be able to figure out where each one of those notes within a tonality fits, which ones they are. And generally, if I write anything down, I don't write it in tab. I write it in standard sheet music because it's faster for me. It's faster for me to write a little dot on a staff than it is to write numbers and stuff. So I usually tab it out. If I don't tab, and if I have to write it out and don't memorize it, I do it that way. So that's how, and I get through a solo kind of just phrase by phrase by figuring out like that. So that's kind of ear training that I teach. Level 1 of my ear training course, just a level 1 alone will teach you how to do that, hear melodies. And level 2 we start with, which I'm working in right now, is actually hearing harmony and chord progressions and how to use your recognition of where you are within the tonality to know whatever chord it is that you're hearing. So that's how I do it. Mr. Singlecool said, how do you learn to play guitar and sing at the same time? I don't. It's just one of those things where if it's a very simple kind of strummed pattern, I can kind of sing over it. But if it's any kind of thing that has any kind of a weird feel to it, like I just did Rosanna, right? And there's that kind of like halftime shuffle thing going on that you can play it, but I can't really sing over it like Steve Lukather did. So I didn't. It takes some practice there. So it's really got to be kind of a simple, when it's kind of just a simple kind of general pattern, it's easy to kind of sing over it. But if I'm playing like a specific rhythm and then I'm singing a different rhythm over it, that's that kind of contrapuntal stuff that, it takes practice. And as a singer, you would work on that. I'm not a singer, so I don't work on it. So it's got to be I'm pretty limited in that myself. So I can't really give you, suggestions on how to get better at it. Kind Name says, will you at some point make a sound tutorial? I always love your tone. Maybe you could release a video of how to find yours and how we can find out tones more easily. I actually have an entire guitar tone. This goes back to my academy. I have an entire guitar tone course in my academy that takes you through the entire signal chain from the very first pedals, from the noise gates all the way through the boost pedals and through all different types of amps and different types of like time domain effects and modulation effects and everything, and the orders that generally things go in and how each effect works and how it affects the other ones. It's like 50 videos just on learning how the signal chain and all the effects that you'll see in a common effects that you'll see guitar players use. And then there's a section of actually getting artist tones, which, I kind of randomly put those up. But the main course itself is complete and it just takes you through the signal chain and how to understand tone and how to understand how it works and how to get your own tone. So I do have that, but it's in my academy. Metgadeath Fan 17. Do you like Jackson or BC Rich guitars? I'm wondering because those are what I use. I've never owned one. I've played some Jackson guitars that were pretty cool. I think they make some nice stuff, like that Phil Collin model looks pretty cool. I've never played it. Never been a BC Rich fan, but I just don't like the crazy body styles and stuff. I like something that's very ergonomic to sit down with and practice with. And but I can see that Jacksons probably have some nice stuff. I'm just, I've kind of had the guitars that I use, and then I just, I don't spread myself too thin and go after and search for great guitars. But I'm sure Jackson makes some great stuff. Aiden Underwood says, favorite or top 3 favorite albums for each decade, starting from the 60s or 70s. Every decade, every album. Okay. So, the 60s, 3 albums from the 60s. Pet Sounds, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds, Sgt. Pepper, and Abbey Road. I'll say Abbey Road, by the way, was released 6 years to the day before I was born. September 26, 1969. I was born September 26, 1975. Send me some Bitcoin on that day. For the 70s, Dark Side of the Moon, Van Halen 1, and more Floyd probably. Probably either Wish You Were Here or The Wall. I know you're limiting me to 3. I'm not going to be able to keep it to 3. The 80s, Okay, I definitely can't give it a 3 for the 80s greatest musical decade in history. Another Van Halen, 1984 Van Halen, Thriller. Michael Jackson was pretty much the first musician I ever became a fan of when I was a kid, like 5 or 6 years old, and just became a massive Michael. And I still love listening to a lot of his stuff. Hysteria, Def Leppard, Master Puppets, Appetite for Destruction, Joshua Tree. U2's Joshua Tree. So that's probably like 6 or 7 in the 80s. You got to get, it's the 80s, you can't keep it to 3. There's a lot more too, but oh well. 90s were my favorite band of all time is Sigur Rós. So they started releasing their first albums in the 90s. Favorite, early one of theirs is Agadis Burjun. I said that wrong. They're Icelandic. I don't speak the language. I just listen to the music. It's my favorite band for over 2 decades now. So they came out in the late 90s, like 99. They came out with that album. So that would be one of my favorites. OK Computer, Radiohead. OK Computer. Man, this is hard to get up because I know I'm forgetting this. I would say when it comes to metal in the 90s, I was a big Devin Townsend fan way before anybody else was Devin Townsend. This is like mid-90s. I was huge into his City album, Strapping Young Lad City, right when it came out. And then also Ocean Machine. I was talking to him about Ocean Machine in the parking lot of this club when I saw the band play, and I was talking about Ocean Machine. He was like shocked that I even knew about it because it wasn't even out yet. I mean, and then Ocean Machine, when it came out, I just loved it. So those two are really great albums from that era for me. Depeche Mode, like songs, a couple of Depeche Mode albums in the 90s that I really liked. Nevermind, of course, you can't forget that. But anyway, and then when you get to the 2000s, it's pretty much it's lighter picking. It's Sigur Rós albums throughout. So every Sigur Rós album throughout the 2000s, and stuff like Kid A, Radiohead type stuff. That's pretty much everything else. Anyway. That was a long answer. Sir Haynes, 1224. 1214. Hey, Carl, some days I don't have much time to practice, so I do more playing on those days. But if you had to pick one practice technique that is a must to do daily, what would it be and why? I would say alternate picking. I always tell people this because they ask me. I always give people individual support in my academy, and they ask me they want to work on technique. And I have a few technique courses. Like I have a full course on alternate picking, which is like 5 hours long. It's like 31 videos. I have courses on economy picking and sweep picking and all that stuff. So I always tell people, start with alternate picking. It's the most important technique. Not only is it used in all styles of guitar, alternate picking, even more than those other techniques like economy picking and sweep picking, alternate picking requires the most synchronization between the hands because you have one pick movement with one fret movement, finger movement in the fret hand. So that synchronization between the hands is pretty much what we're doing when we're playing guitar. We're learning how to synchronize the hands. So alternate picking makes you synchronize the most of any technique. And if you can do that, it's going to affect all aspects of your technique. Doesn't matter chord changes or rhythm skills or whatever, not just solo and stuff. It's everything. So practicing alternate picking, if you had one technique to practice a day, I'd say alternate picking because it just really works on overall coordination on the guitar. Chris the Cruncher, what is your favorite guitar you've owned or your favorite guitar you want to own? The favorite guitar I've owned is my Strat, my Eric Johnson Strat, which I've heavily customized. So you guys have seen it a million times. Farzan Pavri, when are you going to release your solo album? I am trying to get it out by the end of the year. And I go into these phases of getting a lot of good work done on it and then some not so much. So still the goal is to have something out by the end of this year. I'm trying to hold myself to that. It might be a little bit later than that, but I'm hoping by the end of the year. And hopefully you guys will buy it. Yeah. Russ Miner 48, when did you realize that you had progressed beyond intermediate guitar playing? There's never a moment where you're like, hey, I think it's just, I don't know. Yeah, what it makes an intermediate guitar player is up to one person's perception. So some people probably out there in the internet world probably say, oh, I'm an intermediate guitar player, and that's fine. So they would see me that, and some people see me as a super advanced, whatever. It really depends on what level you're coming to it from and what you see as being an advanced guitar. For myself, I don't always see the most technically gifted guitar player as being advanced, the most advanced guitar players. The most advanced musicians are the ones I see as being the music. So the ones who, have a great ear, and can demonstrate their great ear with, like, for improvisation, or, like, great chord work and stuff, like unique, just being able to sit with a metronome and practice a technique exercise for a couple of months. Anybody can really do that. So there's a lot of guys out there who can do that stuff. But so I don't really consider that automatically advanced, that you can do that. You can play a fast lick or whatever. Really, overall musicianship is what I go for, and I think that's more rare. So anyway, but it's kind of once you're there, you don't realize where you've gotten. You always want to go further. So you never go, oh, I'm amazing now, because you should never do that. You should always be, once you get to some place that you think your goal was, you're always going to want more. So, and that's a good thing. IAB, what is your general attitude of the music of the 2000s? Like I said, my favorite band has created most of their music in the 2000s, so I can't. But overall, when it comes to popular music, most of them, I'd say 99% of artists, it's not my thing. I know different generations. I'm an old guy now, I guess, and I like, but I just, a lot of the stuff. I'm not a popular music fan. Like, I don't listen to like a lot hip hop and rap and all that stuff, which kind of dominates the charts and the pop charts and stuff. So it kind of secludes me from listening to, kind of just do my own thing, my own little Spotify playlists and stuff. Alex Aguado, what did you cover when you took lessons with Scott Tennant, and what is the most lasting idea you were able to glean from him? So if you guys don't know who Scott Tennant is, he's an amazing classical guitar player. And I studied privately with him for a while. I have some amazing classical guitar teachers. He's probably the most well-known. He's a Grammy Award-winning guitarist. So he's a great musician. And, we were working on, I think at the time, what were we working on? I think we were working on mostly Lignani caprices at that time. And he, what sticks in my mind when I study from anybody, especially somebody like he's such a world-class player, is, I took from him at his house. So, he's just sitting on his couch and playing, and I'm sitting in front of him, and he's kind of helping me work through ideas and stuff. It's just the overall fluidity and relaxation that he has of his technique. And I think the best players are the most perceptive players, the ones that all of our hands are different, right? We have different, my fingers are different than your hand, whatever. But what you can take from a player is how they approach, like, their touch, and how they it's kind of hard to describe, but just their fluidity in their playing, the relaxation in their playing. And he has a technique, when you see him play, he doesn't look like he's doing much at all, but it comes out as like a very, very powerful sound. And his just control dynamics. One thing he really did work on me with was control of technique. So this is when my fingers still worked, which unfortunately don't too much for fingerstyle stuff. And I was really into classical guitar at that point. And he was really, he liked everything to be kind of planted. To give you, now planting is not staccato playing, but it's like very controlled dynamics, controlling your tone very well. And he did it as such an effortless, fluid way that just watching that and observing that, it kind of gets into the back of your brain that when I go home and practice and I look in front of a mirror, that's what I'm emulating more than anything. It's just the overall fluidity of his playing, and want to get a piece of that. So that's what I think that the most observant players are the best. They're the ones that can take something about somebody's playing and make it their own. Not by copying their exact technique, but just the overall way they're approaching playing something. It's kind of hard to explain. But anyway, that's probably what I got the most from him. And somebody like that, it's kind of the only thing you can really get, because it's just, the technique is just so out of this world. Cabdog Millionaire. Do you use anything to isolate guitar tracks from songs to make it easier to learn by ear? Not usually. Somebody sent me a whole collection of like those Guitar Hero tracks where you can listen to the isolated tracks, but my computer died and I lost all of them. That was a couple years ago, but for the most part, I just use YouTube, like official band videos on YouTube, and I use like my little Vadami pedal, which you guys have seen me use, to kind of start and stop the video where I want, or kind of slow it down. So I do slow it down, but generally I don't do isolated tracks too much. It'd be great to have isolated tracks for everything, and there's some things that have isolated tracks that you can track it down on YouTube, but it depends on how intricate it is, whether I need to do that at all. Mitch Hammond, not sure if you did or still do private one-on-one lessons, but how old was your oldest student you ever taught with success? I don't do private lessons anymore, haven't in like a decade, but I did have some students. You know, I've had a couple of people in their mid-70s that started taking, you know, they would retire and then they would pick up an instrument after the fact, you know, now that they're retired, just for something to do. And they became, I had a couple of guys who started that like well into retirement. So some of them, I think, I don't know their exact age, I can't remember, but it was like in their 70s at least, you know, definitely. And they become, you know, within a few years, they still became, you know, kind of really competent players who could play the stuff that they wanted to and had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, and some of them picked up much quicker than the kids that were taken from me. So don't always believe that kids are a sponge, you know. They are to a point, but a lot of them are also really bullheaded and would rather play a video game. QTRI, what made you want to start teaching guitar and what made you want to make YouTube videos, and who are your biggest guitar inspirations? You know, I taught guitar just to make a living at something because it's the only kind of skill I have, really. So that is the reason why I teach guitar. Yeah, so it was the same thing with YouTube. I just kind of wanted to kind of broaden what I did and just started putting stuff up there. And you know, my channel's been a slow build, but it's gotten up there to now it's a decent sized channel. And yeah, obviously I'd be stupid not to do it. Anyway, but yeah, working for yourself, that's kind of the ultimate goal, right? And then biggest guitar inspirations, you know, I kind of have quite a few, but you know, like Steve Vais and all that stuff in the world. When I was a kid, Steve Vai was like really big with me. Just like again, not his exact technique or the way he writes music or anything, just the way he approaches music and the guitar in general, the passion that he has for it, and the way he kind of looks at things in life. That's what I get more inspired about than anything. And I think he would probably like that too. He doesn't want people copying him, but when he's helping people understand how to find your own thing in music, listening to Steve Vai talk and speak to an audience or on his Patreon or whatever, it's like it's really inspiring. Shakespeare 619. Thoughts on Les Pauls? I haven't seen you teach with one, but I bet you have one or more. I've never owned a Les Paul. I have one here that my guitar tech, he's a big Les Paul freak, and he lets me borrow them and play. I don't use it. I used it a couple lessons actually, but I don't use it too much because it's scalloped. He plays scallop guitars, which is kind of weird for me. I used to play scallop guitars, but I don't. And then all the comments on the video are nothing but about the scallops. So I'm like, I might go back to him and say, hey, can I borrow one that's not scalloped so people can just shut up about it? Because every time I've used it a couple times, so I've stopped using it just because I want to see the same comment over and over again about the guitar itself. He plays scallop guitars and he plays Les Pauls, but I don't own one. I'm not a huge Les Paul fan, just simply because I'm not used to the scale length, the string tension on them, and I don't like the body. I like Strats, how they kind of just mold to your body. And they're very balanced, and you know, I've never been able to kind of get around a Les Paul, just not very comfortable to sit with for me. GA, is online guitar lessons or private lessons your only jobs in life? So yeah, so that's why my online guitar academy is so important to me. That is where I earn a living, which allows me to even do YouTube at all, and stuff like that. So this is all I do is lesson stuff online. Nick's games and guitar videos. How long have you been playing guitar and doing YouTube, and were you ever in a band? I've been playing guitar since about 1985 or 6. Yeah, right around there. And first guitar was a Kramer Focus 1000. And I've been doing YouTube since late 2009. And then I've been in lots of bands, and now I just kind of do my own solo thing. Hey, Trey Castine, when it comes to practicing with a full group for the first few times, what are some key points to focus on or important things you've learned with playing with bands over the time? That's one of the things that always are hard for me to do because I grew up with a drummer. My twin brother is a drummer, so we always learn instruments together and play together. So I actually don't really, when we sit together, when people jam with bands and they get confused of how to lock in with it, I'm like, it's just normal, right? But I can understand, you know, first of all, there's a lot of things that you can do on your own at home. There is playing along with the backing tracks instead of a metronome, playing along with backing tracks like full with guitars kind of isolated out of the mix, and then you have the drummer and bass player and whatever. You can get used to that feel. So if you're just used to playing with the metronomes or nothing, and then you go in to play with a full band, it's going to sound very odd to you. It's also going to sound odd to you when it's no longer a backing track and it is a real band, so the timing is always fluctuating, especially if your drummer sucks, which, you know, a lot of times if you're a new musician, you're probably surrounded by new musicians, and they're probably not the most solid in the world. So for me, I think it's a good thing when you practice along to songs, sometimes practice along to live versions of songs, because you're actually hearing a band in a live element, and things aren't perfect. So, but getting used to that should not feel that different than just playing with your musicians when you're in a room with. It's kind of the same thing. Obviously, there's this headspace you got to get into. It's louder, everything feels different, and stuff like that. But you know, you should get past that pretty quickly. Joseph Mahoney, have you ever used jazz 3 picks, and are you the type of player to change pick strings you use, or do you stick with what you like? I've used jazz 3 picks all the way since the mid '90s. I was using the red jazz 3s, and then forever. Then I switched to the Ultex Jazz 3s in like 2009. I used that for over a decade. Lately, then I started experimenting a lot more. Actually, right now I still have one here. I'm using these Gator Grip Jazz 3s, and I've been using these for about well over a year now. So it's generally some type of a Jazz 3 I've been using for most of my playing career. Laura Wright says, can you be a professional guitar player without knowing theory? Definitely. I would say professional means you make money at it. It doesn't mean you have this great knowledge or whatever. So there are a lot of very famous guitar players who are good bajillionaires, a lot richer than I would ever be, that have zero or very little musical knowledge. Now, having said that, do I think those same people, if they had music theory knowledge, would it ruin their playing or their creative spirit? No, it would have done nothing but improved it. It's not something that stifles you. It's a foundation that you can build on. So if you're a creative person to begin with, you're probably going to be able to create some cool stuff without studying theory. By the way, you're always studying. I mean, you're not like reinventing the wheel. Even if somebody doesn't know theory, they're probably still playing the same chords and scales that everybody else does. They just learn them by watching, and they don't really study what it is. They kind of use their ear and kind of go intuitively and stuff like that. So that's how they're really watching. But if you can, instead of having to just watch players and then formulate your own ideas from that, if you can instead tackle theory directly and learn it from the source, you can get a lot more information on your fingers and a lot better ear developed a lot quicker. And then your creativity is going to be able to explode, because you're still creative, except now you have this huge foundation to work from. When you have a creative idea in your head, you now know immediately what it is. You don't need to search around for an hour and a half to try to find it, because you developed theory and ear training skills. And so it helps you create music. It doesn't hinder it at all. Live to Win says, do you use earplugs every time you play guitar, or are they always not needed? I never use earplugs. I use a Line 6 Helix. So this is a modeling amp. I can have this at whisper volume. It doesn't, I have 3 dogs in my studio at all times while I'm practicing or playing or transcribing, and it doesn't even wake them up. It's very, very quiet. So yeah, I never need any type of earplugs. Ermahan Dermakale, what do you do when you realize you've made a big mistake in your 40-minute full song tutorials? It happens. It happens. Nobody's perfect. You can't have, I have like 1,500 song tutorials up there. Thing is, I don't have a lot of time to work on these songs. I usually have 3 or 4 songs, and some of them are very intricate, long, hour-long lessons of these complex solos and stuff. So I'm not going to get every note right 100% of the time. I think I do a pretty good job of being pretty accurate with it. But yeah, there's things out there that I know that I got wrong. And because I realized I don't just have the time to sit there and study one song for a month and to get every single minutia about it perfect. I'm usually rushed to get these things filmed, because I have to have a certain amount of stuff done on YouTube every day, and then I'm spending the rest of the week developing stuff for my academy and supporting those lessons. So Mistakes will happen occasionally, but I think I do a pretty good job of being relatively accurate with everything. And so I just have to let it go and not stress out about it. When people, trust me, they bring it to my attention if I got something wrong or halfway wrong or they have a different idea of it. And I got to the point now, I was like, you know what, I'm not even going to argue with these people. They can think what they want. They can do what they want. They can learn it or not. You know, it is what it is. The Joker said, what should I do to train my ear? Well, for a guy who has an ear training course, I'm going to say that. But my opinion for ear training is focus, even if it's my course or some other course, focus on functional ear training. To me, for students and for my own ear training, that I've tried every type of ear training, from interval training to functional training to, God, literally like meditation and hypnosis. I mean, I'm obsessed about this. The only thing for me that actually really worked and that I can actually teach the students too, and it works for them, is functional ear training. So that's what you learn in like my ear training course in my academy. And Andrew, oh, by the way, there's a free 7-day trial of the academy too. So you can go in there, you can check out in the very beginning of ear training course, I kind of explain all what functional ear training is and why it is. And you have a full week to decide whether you think that's going to work for you or not. And if not, you can just cancel and never be charged a dime. Andrew Guzman, hair and skincare routine. Mr. Brown not looking a day over 25. Well, thank you. Well, I eat lots of vegetables, but no, I don't. I'm 45 years old, and I do still get carded from time to time, but I moisturize and stuff, you know, same old thing. My hair is looking a little bit gray these days on YouTube. I'm going to preface this by saying it's no more gray than it was 20 years ago. We changed our lighting in here. I'm staring at two white kind of umbrella lamps here that are right under me, and they're taking any kind of lighter looking hair that I have and making it look stark white, and making it look like it's a lot more. When you see me in person, I don't look like I nearly as much gray hair as I look. No, first of all, I've had gray hair since I was in my 20s. That's kind of one of the things with my family. But it's a little tiny bit. And I don't really see a huge increase in it, maybe a little bit in the past 20 years. But these lights make me look like an old man. So I look a lot younger in person. Anyway, so my hair tip would be, don't stand in front of these umbrella lights all day. They age you. XLXH, how was it like growing up in the best decades for music? Thank you. The 80s was the greatest decade. The only decade where I think, you know, we had great pop music, we had great metal music, we had great rock music, we had just so much fun stuff coming up. I mean, the biggest pop stars in the world, I loved their music. The biggest pop kind of rock bands like Depeche Mode, some of my favorite bands still to this day. And then we had the rock bands. They were just as run the gamut. There's from everything. The biggest bands in the world would be like U2 and Def Leppard and God, just, you know, you can't even, Van Halen. I mean, they all sound completely different. And now it seems like we don't have that. We just like, we have popular artists. It's the top 100 is like it's all the same stuff. And there's just no, I don't know, don't get me on a rant here. But anyway, I feel bad for anybody that didn't listen to the 80s, but I didn't live in the 80s, but you can just listen back to it and turn off the garbage of today, and you'll be a lot better person. Anyway, Chris's Guitar Show says, have you ever met or saw David Gilmour live? I have not. It's a goal of mine. David Gilmour, definitely top 2 or 3 players, and when he comes through here in the LA area, I'm going to be there for his solo stuff. I'm not going to miss that. John Davey Caracut, who is going to replace you if you're gone? I won't be here forever. I guarantee you that. But maybe when eventually I can have somebody come and help me on the channel, do some really great lessons, and breathe some new life into it. Because like I said, this is I'm an old and decrepit man. So, one of these days, I think I'm going to start getting some people on my channel that I think are really great players, and then they can really improve the channel and just make it grow far beyond what I can do all by myself. So I think maybe in the next couple of years, I can try to start doing that. And so you'll see some guys. So if anything happened to me, I'm sure hopefully the people that are making lessons for the channel, that they can pick up all the slack. Wouldn't be hard to do. Ramification says Brian Wilson or Paul McCartney. You got to be kidding me. How do you choose between Brian Wilson and Paul McCartney? I have seen Paul McCartney in concert twice. And I saw him in 2000. I saw him at Dodger Stadium, but I also saw him in 2015. It was one of the last things that I ever did with my dad, and it was an amazing concert. It was just unbelievable what he could do at his age, and just was incredible. He was just unbelievable. I've never seen Brian Wilson play. I want to see him play, but choosing who is Brian Wilson is like just a out of this world musical genius, and I think Paul McCartney is obviously, coming from a different thing, not as such an advanced harmonic sense and all the stuff that like the Brian Wilson had, but Paul McCartney as just a true just genius songwriter. How do you really just put those two together? I can't choose, but either or for me. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. I know these things run long, but I don't do them very often. So anybody that's still here, I appreciate you hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys again soon. All right, bye.